On August 19th of 1975, 3 girls went to a gas station and purchased some items, after which they decided to hitchhike back home. The 3 girls were 13-year-old Candace Smith, 11-year-old Sherry Rottler Trick, and 14-year-old Kathy Rottler. As they were walking along East Washington Street in Indianapolis, a white vehicle pulled up beside the girls. The driver was a man, and he offered them a ride. Kathy sat in the front passenger seat, and the other 2 got in the back. When the driver was nearing their destination, he showed no signs of slowing down or stopping. The girls pointed this out to him, but he accelerated and passed their destination. It was at this point that the girls knew they were in danger. Kathy told the girls to open their doors and escape, but they realized that the doors didn't have handles. Kathy attempted to press on the brake pedal from the passenger seat, but her leg wasn't long enough. The driver pulled the gun and pressed it against Kathy's head, threatening to kill the 3 girls if they tried to escape. The driver parked at a cornfield and tied the 2 older girls up. He proceeded to sexually assault the youngest. Then he stabbed Sherry repeatedly and cut her throat. Before leaving, he also stabbed the other 2 girls several times. The girls pretended to be dead in order to avoid getting stabbed more. Kathy and Candace were able to make their way out of the cornfield to a nearby road, where they managed to be rescued. All 3 girls ended up surviving the ordeal, which many people considered a miracle. Unfortunately, the case would soon go cold. The victims were able to help the police create a composite sketch of the attacker, but this did not generate any useful leads. Kathy attempted to keep the case open and in the public eye for a long time after the attack, but it started to seem as if justice would never be served. Finally, in 2018, 43 years after the initial attack had occurred, the case was reopened and the investigators dedicated themselves to using forensic technology to better examine DNA evidence. Law enforcement identified Thomas Edward Williams as the perpetrator of the attack. Williams had lived near the site of the abduction in 1975, but further information will never come to light. Williams died in 1983 while serving an unrelated prison sentence in Texas. The 3 girls had to relentlessly push law enforcement to publicly release Williams' name, which they eventually did. Their resilience was remarkable, and without their help, the case would never have been solved. Sherry stated that she forgave Williams for what he did, because otherwise, she never would have been able to continue on with her life. Candace has stated that she is now at peace. In 1986, a human skull was discovered off Highway 20 near Interstate 80, close to Lake Tahoe, California. The skull was confiscated by law enforcement and was preserved at the Placer County Coroner's Office. Years would go by without the skull being identified, and it seemed as if it would remain a mystery forever. However, a cold case team was established to investigate unsolved missing persons cases and suspicious deaths. This team sent the skull to the California Department of Justice for DNA testing. As it turned out, the skull belonged to a woman named Donna Lass. Donna had been 25 years old when she went missing. There are several conflicting accounts of when Donna was last seen. One source claims she was last seen on September 7th of 1970 walking outside her apartment with a young blonde man. Another source claims she was last seen at the Sahara Hotel and Casino, where she worked as a nurse. Yet another source claims she was last seen on September 6th, although it doesn't specify a location. The cause of death is unknown, but a disturbing theory has arisen in Donna's case. The authorities believe that Donna Lass may have been a victim of the Zodiac Killer. The reason why this theory exists is a little unclear, but it has something to do with a postcard that was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle on March 22nd of 1971. This postcard had been sent by a man claiming to be the Zodiac Killer. It contained multiple cryptic lines, including Sierra Club, Sought Victim 12, and Peek Through the Pines. In 2007, the South Lake Tahoe police had actually conducted a dig near Lake Tahoe in an attempt to find a victim of the Zodiac Killer. It's possible that he was referencing Donna in this postcard, but as of now, there's no hard evidence to back this theory up. Hopefully this will change soon, and the authorities will conclusively determine how Donna Lass perished. In 1993, 27-year-old Alan Livingston was on the verge of turning 28 when he mysteriously vanished from Indianapolis. There was hardly any information about Alan's case at the time, and everybody soon gave up hope. Even Alan's mother eventually lost hope of finding her son because she would frequently call the authorities to check in on the investigation, and they would tell her that there was no new information. However, in June of 1996, a new piece of information would come to light that would eventually lead to Alan's case being solved. A man named Herb Baumeister was married and had 3 children, and his 15-year-old son discovered a human skull on their property, Fox Hollow Farm. Immediately following this discovery, Baumeister's wife was granted an emergency protective order and full custody of her children in order to keep them and herself away from Baumeister. Divorce proceedings began while law enforcement initiated an investigation of Fox Hollow Farm. The investigation quickly turned up more human remains on the property, and Baumeister claimed they were a part of his father's medical practice. Nobody really bought this story, especially considering how the investigators turned up bones and fragments belonging to at least 25 people. Alan's cousin contacted the authorities and told them one of the sets of human remains might have belonged to Alan. This prompted the investigators to begin working on identifying the remains. In total, there were 10,000 pieces of human remains on the property, and the investigators just so happened to choose Alan's bones to use for DNA testing. It was confirmed that Alan had been buried on the property, but the new question was why. One of the things that the investigators noticed early on was that many of the remains had been burned and crushed. This suggested that Baumeister had been actively trying to get rid of evidence. Unfortunately, these tactics tend to be effective. The authorities had publicly announced that anyone with missing family members should submit their DNA for comparison to the remains found on Fox Hollow Farm, but many of the remains were unable to be tested due to their condition. Law enforcement wanted to question Baumeister about the discovery, but they would never get the chance to do so. In July of 1996, he committed suicide. Despite this setback, the authorities have been able to piece together a potential picture of Baumeister's activities. His modus operandi was approaching men at gay bars and luring them back to his home, where he would murder them and then dispose of their bodies. By 1999, investigators linked him to at least 16 disappearances in Indiana and Ohio. As of now, the full extent of Baumeister's crimes is unknown. Hopefully this will change and more families will get the answers they deserve. It's unfortunate that Baumeister took the coward's way out rather than face justice for his actions. On May 15th of 2016, Walter Eugene Patterson-Black was reported missing by his family. He was last seen a few days prior at a convenience store in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. On May 17th, the authorities found Walter's car in a YMCA parking lot. They developed a theory that Walter may have entered the nearby North Platte River on foot and drowned as a result. Firefighters spent several days scouring the river for any sign of Walter, and the police searched the surrounding area. The Nebraska State Patrol's air wing was used in the search, as well as cadaver dogs. Despite their efforts, the authorities found no trace of Walter. In October of 2021, a hunter was setting up a goose blind on a property between Melbeta and Minutair. While he worked, he discovered a human bone and a piece of cloth. The bone was confirmed to be human by a forensic pathologist, but they still needed to determine who it had belonged to. The bone underwent DNA testing, during which time it was known as the Scottsbluff John Doe. Finally, in September of 2023, it was announced that the bone did indeed belong to Walter Eugene Patterson-Black. It's impossible to conclusively determine a cause of death with the only remains being one singular bone, but the authorities still maintain their original theory. At least Walter's family can have some closure and not be left wondering about whether or not Walter might come back one day.